Circle of competence is the area in which certain kinds of industries, for example, I can understand the future economics of other kinds of industries. I have to know where the perimeter of that circle is. Now, over the years, I may be able to enlarge the circle somewhat, but the circle never gets to be all-encompassing. Tom Watson Sr., who built IBM, said, "I'm no genius, but I'm smart in spots, and I stay around those spots." Well, he was talking about a circle of competence. My partner Charlie says, it's wonderful to have an IQ of 180 as long as you don't think it's 200. And I have seen all kinds of very, very smart people self-destruct one way or another in business, or particularly in the stock market. And they stray outside of their circle of competence just because they know they're very, very smart, but that doesn't mean they know everything. And defining what your game is, where you're going to have an edge, is enormously important. And I think both my partner Charlie and I have gotten reasonably good at that over the years.
Need motivation?
Watch a Top 10 with Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Carmichael, and I make these videos because in my first business, I struggled to stay afloat. I quit on my business partner, and the thing that kept me motivated, that kept me going, was studying the stories of famous, successful entrepreneurs. And in their stories, it gave me the hope, the drive, the ambition, the thinking that maybe I can do it too, that extra bit of belief. And I still need their stories today, and I'm honored to share them with you here as well. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Warren Buffett, and my take on his top 10 rules of success. Enjoy. Rule number 2 is embrace failure.
All the early businesses that we owned together have disappeared.
They didn't disappear, they failed.
They failed, yeah.
Yeah, right.
but we took so much out of them before they failed that it still worked out fine for us.
We evolved them. I mean, but literally, the three base businesses all ended up disappearing. They went out of business. They no longer fit into society in a sense. And actually, the very first deal that we joined in on was something called diversified retailing, which was in Baltimore. We bought a department store there. And we had Sandy Gottesman had 10%, Charlie had 10%, and in his partnership, he had 10%. And I had 80% in our partnership, and the three of us. And we always treated it as, we may have had 80, but we were equal partners. We had some terrific people who were running it for us that were actually related to Sandy's wife.
Exceptionally honorable people.
Really honorable people, and smart. If you're losing money in a business with a smart, decent person, we got a problem. I mean, that's the business. Use the smart, decent person to move them over some other place and move the capital some other place. And
the company was not yet losing money, but we soon realized it was about to lose money.
Yeah. And so we sold the department store. It went out of business in 1983, but Hutzler's, which was the silk stocking department store, they went out of business in, 1985 or something. They're gone. And the people there, quite understandably, wanted to build more branch stores, but you don't want to put more money into a business that's destined for failure. Now, we put $6 million of capital in that, and it was a dumb decision, everything. But that's $6 million. What would it be worth now, Charlie? They got 4/10 of a share.
A great many billions.
Oh, it's tens of billions.
Yeah.
Now, if the department store had succeeded, we'd have a nice little business to send us a little check, but because it failed, we made we made more than 25 billion in that. It didn't look like it at the time, though.
So when you realized it was a mistake, what did you do? How did you address it?
We asked Sandy, who was the best salesman among us, to go sell it. and we sold it, and we put the money into Berkshire.
We got about 95% of our money back.
Yeah, and we'd borrowed $6 million in there, so now we bought Berkshire stock and we bought blue chip stock, and we eventually put it all together. It looked like a plate of spaghetti at one time, which was not good. It was just complicated, and so we put them all together. And I've still got stock, and Charlie still got stock that came out of diversified retailing, as do a number of my partners from the old days. Best thing that happened to us was that this place failed. Obviously, was a failure.
Why? What did you learn?
To leave quickly.
Yeah, and use the capital someplace else.
Rule number 3 is assign yourself the right story.
I met Bob Woodward back, and he'd just come out with all the president's men, and all of a sudden, below 30 years of age, he was getting quite wealthy, and we had breakfast or lunch over at the Madison Hotel. And he said, "What do I do with this money?" And I said, I said, investing is just about assigning yourself the right story. I said, imagine Ben Bradley this morning said to you, what is the Washington Post company worth? What would you do? You have to write the story in a month. You'd go out and interview TV brokers and newspaper brokers and the owners, and you'd try and value each asset. I said, that's what I do. I assign myself the right story. And it's nothing more than that. Now, there's some stories I can't write. If you ask me to write a story on, what is some glamorous but non-profit-making business worth, I don't know how to write that story. But if you ask me to write a story on what is Potomac Electric Power worth or something like that, I can write the story. And that's what I'm doing every day. I'm assigning myself a story, and then I go out and...
So you get... Rule number 4 is study stocks.
You made your first investment when you were 11 years old?
In 1942, 80 years ago, I took $114.75, every penny I'd saved, and I bought 3 shares of City Service Preferred. And City Service was a pretty well-known name now and then. In fact, in 1920, City Service, I think, was the 4th largest company in the United States in terms of number of shareholders. It was a big company. And so it had a preferred stock that was selling at 38 that had started skipping the dividends during the Depression. So it accumulated dividends on it of $60 or $70. And of course, it was par value of $100 too, and it was selling at 38. And at breakfast one morning, I follow all the stocks every day, but then I made my plunge, and I had roughly this amount of money, so I bought 3. I don't remember this precisely, but I think I told my dad in the morning, now, let's move, Dad. Pop, I call it. But let's move, Pop.
But you felt the thrill of it then.
I've been reading about it and following it. The whole market. I really had read every book in the Omaha Public Library that was on the stock market.
By 11?
By 11, I'll guarantee you. And some of them twice. I started out reading the ones in my dad's office, and I just love to read.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there.
Rule number 5 is never stop learning.
I'm wondering what habit or habits have contributed most to your ability to continue learning and improving your investment decisions in a changing business and financial environment.
I would say that, at least in my case, I haven't been continually learning in terms of the basic principles. You always learn a little more about given techniques, or I learn more about some industries over time, and therefore maybe I've widened the universe in which I can operate, although more funds narrows it back down, unfortunately. But I know more about businesses than I knew 20 years ago or 40 years ago. I haven't really changed the principles. The last change, the basic principles are still Ben Graham. They were affected in a significant way by Charlie and Phil Fisher in terms of looking at the better businesses. But I didn't leave Graham behind on that. And I really haven't learned any new fundamental principles, but I may have learned a little bit more about how business operates over time. And there's really nothing. I mean, you ought to get a investment framework that comes straight from, in my view, from the Intelligent Investor and from Phil Fisher. More from the Intelligent Investor, actually. And then I think you ought to learn everything you can about industries and businesses where you think you have the ability to get your mind around them if you work at them. And with that arsenal, you'll do very well. And if you've got the temperament for the business.
Rule number 6 is be persistent.
When I got out of business school at Columbia, I had a hero there named Ben Graham who did wonders for me in all kinds of ways in my life. But when I got out of school, I said, could I go to work for you for nothing? I was sort of hoping that if he said yes, he would then decide to pay me. And he told me that that his little firm, which only employed about 6 or 7 people, that there was so much prejudice then in Wall Street. And Wall Street was divided then between Jewish firms and Gentile firms. I mean, there were a couple like Kuhnlo maybe that were known as Jewish firms, and there would be others that were known totally as Gentile firms. And Ben said that because that prejudice existed and he'd experienced it, that he felt that to the extent that they had any employment to offer with 6 or 7 people, that they had hired up to that point only Jews. So I came out to Omaha and sold stocks and said, but I kept pestering them for a while. And a few years later, they hired me. I was the first Gentile hired.
Rule number 7 is surround yourself with greatness.
Long, long ago, people don't even know about this, but we owned 2 small insurance companies at Berkshire that both went broke. Except we didn't let them go broke. I mean, in other words, we could have walked away from them and left money because they were separate companies, and we didn't walk away. We haven't spent our lifetime, working at things to try and figure out ways to walk away from debts or have things in indentures and play games like they have, with credit default swaps to figure out ways to take advantage of the lenders. It's just not our game. If we owe money, we're going to pay it back.
You said that it would occur to you both that it was the more profitable way, but that's certainly not necessarily how the majority of people in business think.
It's the way our dads thought in both cases. Who the hell knows where you get your values from exactly, but basically, you have a few people that are teachers to you in life that are not formal teachers, and the most important people are generally your parents. And I never heard my dad say to me in my life, be sure you pay all your debts, but I just watched how he lived. And you want to have certain people in life that you don't want to disappoint. You want to have people that make you a better person than you otherwise would be. And Charlie does that for me now, but my dad did it for me early on. I didn't know his dad, but from everything I've heard about his dad, he had the same experience.
Rule number 8 is do what makes you happy.
What brings you the happiness?
Oh, I would have to honestly say that what makes me happiest is what I'm doing. I enjoy 2 things about it. One, I know I'll win over time. That doesn't mean I'll beat everybody else or anything like that. But I'm in a game that's very, very, very easy if you have the right lessons in your mind about what you're buying. I'm not buying stocks. I'm buying pieces of overwhelmingly American business. And I'm happy when that's happy, when I'm doing it. I'm happy when stocks are going down. I'm happier when stocks are going down because I can buy more of them with the same amount of money. I'd be happy if I was a farmer. I'd want farmland to go down so I could buy more acreage. If I was, it just makes sense. And I'll tell you the second thing I really like. I like being trusted by people. And, I would rather do what I do with partners than do it sitting in a room myself, even though I might make more money that way.
Rule number 9 is always be grateful.
I'm doing whatever I love day by day by day by day, and I do it, in air-conditioned offices and with all kinds of help. And how could you be sour about life, being blessed in so many ways? And then the amazing thing is that when Charlie's 84, I'm 77, and we've slowed down, I'm sure, in a lot of ways, but we pretend we haven't, and it doesn't seem to bother us. We get along fine. Great partners, great managers, great families. There's just no reason to look at any minuses in life and to focus on that. It would be crazy. So, we really do count our blessings because they've been many, and they continue to come forth, and we'll enjoy it as long as we can. There's not much more to it than that.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is be a great teacher.
When I've asked you in the past what you'd like to be remembered for, you've said you want to be remembered as a teacher.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, I've gotten so much from other teachers, and I enjoy it too. I mean, I have a good time talking with groups, usually students, but sometimes other groups too, and they appreciate it. I just had a group last Friday from 11 universities. We had Stanford, UCLA, we had Iowa, we had K-State, and we had Peking University. They came from China, and it is fun just talking to bright young people who have yet to live their lives, and they're much more interested in the personal stuff usually than investments. I mean, they're all going to do well financially, but some of them will make a lot of mistakes and other things, and maybe I can be of help. It's rewarding to you, and as long as they want to come, I'm willing to stand up there and talk to them.
How did the teaching of the students, how did the school's list get started?
I'm not exactly sure. I mean, some years ago, many years ago, when I would go to directors' meetings at Coca-Cola in Atlanta or Gillette in Boston, I would schedule a talk. And I mean, they'd ask me, but it'd be Harvard or Babson or Northeastern or whatever it might be, or it'd be Emory in Atlanta or Georgia Tech or whatever it might. And so they just ask, and I'd make a point of going a little bit earlier, staying a little late, and talking to them. And then that got to be a lot of work, and it became easier to have them come here. So I now take them in groups of 10 schools, 20 students per group. At least a third of them have to be women, and then they can ask anything they want. If you buy a business, if you buy a farm, you go up and look, every couple of weeks to see how far the corn is up, and you worry too much about whether somebody says this is going to be a year of low prices because exports are being affected or anything like that. You buy a farm. And you hold it for, I've got one farm that I bought in the 1980s, and my son runs it, but I've been there once, I mean, it doesn't grow faster if I go and stare at it, I can't cheer for it, more effort, or something like that. And I know there's going to be some years when prices are going to be good and some when the prices aren't going to be good. I know there's years when yields will be better than others, but I bought the farm. It just doesn't, I don't care about economic predictions on it or anything of the sort. I do care that over the years it's well tended to in terms of rotating crops, and I hope yields get better, which they generally have. In fact, that farm 100 years ago would have probably produced 30 bushels, maybe 35 bushels of corn per acre, and now in a good year, it'd be 200. I mean, we've really made progress in this country. That's one reason commodity prices, if you go back a couple hundred years, they've moved so little, is because we've just gotten better and better at whether it's cotton or whether it's corn or soybeans or all kinds of things. And you and I have benefited from that.
And so Apple is kind of like a farm.
Well, it's a long-term investment. And if you own the best auto dealership in town, the best brand, and you had somebody good running it, you wouldn't drop by every day and say, how many people have come in today, or, I think interest rates are going up a little, maybe it'll slow down our sales or anything. No, you buy it knowing there's 365 days a year, and you're going to own it for 20 years, so that's 7,300 days, and things are going to be different from day to day and year to year. You shouldn't buy it if the day-to-day stuff is important. In business, I swing at easy pitches. I stand there at the plate, and if I like pitches 1 inch above my navel, right in the center of the plate, I can wait and wait and wait because there's no called strikes. As long as that bat's on my shoulder, nobody's calling a strike. If the pitcher throws me General Motors at 36, IBM at 82, Microsoft at 25, and I don't swing, it's not a strike. It's not a hit either, but it's not a strike. Only when I swing is it a strike. So I wait for easy pitches. I wait for things I understand are exactly in my sweet spot.
You haven't bought the stock. You're an admirer of Jeff Bezos. A listing of the richest people in America came out. He's number 1. I think your friend Bill Gates is number 2. You're number 3. So you can see what he's done in myriad ways.
Yeah.
And of course, the question is, how come you haven't bought Amazon? Is there still time to buy? Would you still buy it?
Oh, I always admired Jeff. I mean, I met him 20 years ago or so, and I thought he was something special, but I didn't realize you could go from books to what's happened there. No, I mean, he had a vision and executed in an incredible way, something that it would not have, but there's a lot of games I miss. I would have missed Microsoft even if I got to know Bill earlier or something. Those just aren't my games. I don't worry about the things that I miss that are outside my circle of competence.
of evaluating. I have missed things that were within my circle, and that's a terrible mistake. Those are my biggest mistakes. You haven't seen them. But I don't, it's not a mistake because I miss Netscape or something like that at all. I would say that maybe 5% of the companies or 10% of the companies at most are within an area of my circle of competence. There's something I should be able to understand.
What are the key indicators you look for within companies before making an investment?
Well, I look for something that does give them a moat around it. We have a company called See's Candy out on the West Coast. See's Candy is boxed chocolates. If you give a box of See's chocolates to your girlfriend on the first date and she kisses you, we own you. You know, I mean, we can raise the price tomorrow and you'll buy the same box. You're not going to fool around with success. So the key there is the response. You do not want to go home on Valentine's Day and say to your wife or your sweetheart, preferably they're the same person, you don't say, here, honey, I took the low bid. It doesn't work. Price is, to a degree, is immaterial. If you've got an economic castle, people are going to come and want to take that castle away from you. And you better have a strong moat. You better have a knight in the castle that knows what he's doing. How do I value the business that Berkshire acquires? Well, the first thing I have to decide when somebody calls me is valuing this business within my circle of competence. I don't know how to value Microsoft. I don't know how to value Oracle. I mean, if Larry Ellison calls me or Bill Gates calls me, and they don't. But if any of those, I don't know, or biotech or anything, I wouldn't know how to value it. I just, I'd wish them well and tell them, I think it's worth twice as much as they think it is, but I'm just not in the mood to buy today. I don't know. So it has to be within my circle of competence. My circle of competence, businesses I can understand. And when I say understand, I don't mean understand how to use a computer or not use a computer in terms of a computer company. I mean understand what the economic characteristics of the business are and what the company's really going to look like in 5 or 10 or 20 years. Bill Gates will tell you that if he were investing, he would buy Berkshire rather than Microsoft because it's so much easier to understand what our businesses are going to look like, whereas he's in a business where you're going to really have to be doing things differently over time. So I know that Wrigley's is going to be the #1 chewing gum in the country. I know Snickers is going to be the #1 candy bar in the country 10 years from now. It's been the #1 candy bar for 40 years. You don't have to be very bright to understand that when people lay out 50 cents for something that they stick in their mouth, that they're not about to experiment. I mean, we try to look at businesses we can understand. If you tell me who your heroes are, I can tell you how you're going to turn out to quite an extent by this point in life. And I have been extraordinarily lucky in that none of my heroes ever let me down. I mean, the ones I came up with throughout their lives, I've never felt that I've been let down in any way with it. #1 was my dad, and had a huge impression on me. My wife, who is here, is one of my heroes. I mean, she is, in terms of she's taught me a tremendous amount, and never seen anybody any better with human beings than she is. And you can, Yogi Berra again said you can observe a lot just by watching. And I watched my dad, and I've watched her, and I had a professor, Ben Graham, back at Columbia, and had a huge impact on me. So I have been lucky in that I've had terrific heroes, and they haven't let me down. And that takes you a long, long way. I've gone through 1 or 2 periods where we're kind of tough in life, but not. I mean, everybody's had that, but having the right heroes will take you right through it.
Warren is probably the most rational person I've ever met. Charlie Munger would be a close rival. And Charlie became a man that Warren depended on heavily. And I think his first experiences in the discarded cigar butt era convinced him that it was not exactly where he wanted to be.
He'd made so much money for so long doing what he'd been taught by Ben Graham, which is to buy these very cheap stocks. And if they were cheap enough, he didn't care if it was a lousy company and a lousy management. He knew he was going to make money anyway just because of the cheapness.
Charlie Munger has had a big impact on me in moving me toward looking for wonderful companies at fair prices rather than fair companies at wonderful prices.
And that was enormously important because it enabled Berkshire to scale up in a way that would have been impossible to do otherwise.
We were mental partners right from the moment we met.
I want to know, going back 50 years, what it was like when you first met Warren.
Well, I thought he was a prodigy. And I got a lot of criticism. My wife said, "Why are you paying such enormous respect to that young man with a crew cut who won't eat vegetables?"
He's ungodly smart. He's got a much broader intellect than I do. And he's magnificent at being able to condense important ideas into just a very few words.
If you're not interested in the economic scene right now, you're mentally dead.
Charlie has no tact.
All right, let's talk a little bit about bankers. Charlie on Friday compared them to heroin addicts.
Yeah, well, that's colorful, Charlie, but I would not have chosen that.
I once wrote of him that when they handed out humility, he didn't get his fair share.
The ideal way to run a headquarters is to have one man, preferably over 80, sitting in an office by himself. Anything else is pure frippery.
He's always honest in what he tells me, so I listen to him.
We never had an argument. We just kind of roll with it easily. Suppose Warren doesn't want to do something that I would have done. And suppose that happens 4 times over 40 years or something. What the hell difference does it make to me? Net, the record is working out fine.
There's no question that capitalism, as it gets more advanced, will widen the gap between the people that have market skills, whatever that market demands, and others, unless government does something in between, which, say, the earned income tax credit or all kinds of things. And I think that's a proper function. So I would say that if people, it isn't some diabolical plot or anything, but look at it this way. If you go back to 1800 and 80% of the people were farmers, and you were the best farmer in Omaha and I was the worst, the difference in our value might be 2 to 1. You might be worth twice as much if we were out there picking corn or whatever we might be doing or planting. But now, there's, we'll say, 2 million times, there's 30 million American males between 20 and 35. And if you're in the top 1/10 of 1% in basketball ability or football ability or baseball ability, you aren't worth anything. If you're in the top 100th of 1%, you're getting close. So if the payoff is huge because some guy discovered television many years ago and another guy discovered pay TV or cable and then pay TV, so that your talents, where Ted Williams got $20,000 a year for batting .406, your talents now, if you make the majors, still doesn't pay well in the minors, but if you finally get to that 1/100th of 1%, now you're worth millions. And 1/10 of 1%, you can just play sandlot ball. And so you get this pushing of extreme rewards to people who are very, very good at something the market demands. And people demand entertainment. They demand people, apparently, that arbitrage securities. You know, I mean, there's certain specialties. And that isn't because a bunch of people are sitting in a room deciding we're going to figure out how to take it away from the poor or anything like that. It's because of the market system. But we want the market system to keep functioning that way. But we don't want people left behind in a society where you've got $60,000 plus of GDP per capita. And that the people in the lower half have been falling behind the gains overall achieved by the country. And they aren't worse off than they were 20 years ago. They're somewhat better off, and they're better off because of things like an iPhone. I mean, you know, that's something that's terribly useful, and everybody. I get the benefits of search, you know, for nothing, you know, basically. But that's the ultimate tension: is how do you keep a system that produces incredible
benefits for everybody, you know. Sports is an easy example because we all like to watch them. We don't want to watch a bunch of guys like you and me play basketball. So that's where the money is. But that didn't exist 200 years ago.
But how do we address that?
We address it through things like the Earned Income Tax Credit. And we address it so that anybody that works 40 hours a week and has a couple of kids, that they don't need a second job in the family. They can have a decent life.
Does that mean increasing the minimum wage?
It means increasing the Earned Income Tax Credit, because I think that's a better system. What they need is more money in their pocket. Now, you can do more money in the pocket through a minimum wage, but you don't have as many people working. You need something so they have money in their pocket. And we can do that, and that does require in my view, it requires higher taxes on people where they were born into this world with peculiar talents that marvelously now and then 200 years ago, they would have been out there picking corn with me.
Can you take the higher taxes on wealthy people and put it directly to the Earned Income Tax Credit?
Well, you could.
I mean, because people complain, oh, my taxes are going up. They're squandered.
Nobody likes taxes, obviously.
Yeah, but if you had a program where it was earmarked.
Well, that's what people do when they're on the debate stage. You know, currently it's the Democrats, and they tell you all their new programs and how they'll pay for it, but they don't tell you how they're going to pay for the ones that are already there. Nobody's discussed the $1 trillion deficit we have. So to talk about how you're going to introduce some new, but basically, you don't want to run deficits indefinitely that increase the relationship of debt to GDP. There's some point at which that causes real problems, although we haven't seen it a lot of places that you might expect to see it. But this country has the productive capacity to let people like me live extraordinarily well, or sports stars or entertainment stars, all kinds of good managers, whatever, and still make sure that nobody is really left so that two people have to work and you have to hold two jobs and you wonder how you're going to feed your kids if you're working. You know, $7.50 an hour doesn't do it, and $10 an hour doesn't do it, but we can do it. We have the resources to do it. It's absolutely true, in my view, that you can and should understand human behavior better as you do get older. You just have more experience with it, and I don't think you can read. Charlie and I read every book we could on every subject we were interested in, you know, when we were very young, and we learned an enormous amount just from studying the lives of other people. But I don't think you can really. I don't think you can get to be an expert on human behavior at all by reading books, no matter what your IQ is, no matter who the teacher is, and. I think that you really do learn a lot about human behavior. Sometimes you have to learn it by having multiple experiences. I actually think despite all the other shortcomings, and I can't do mental arithmetic as fast as I used to, and I can't read as fast as I used to, but I do think that I know a lot more about human behavior than I did when I was 25 or 30. We've got to crank in interest rates because everything in valuation gets back to interest rates. And if you take the U.S. Treasury bill now, which is, we'll call it 80 basis points, depends what maturity, that means the U.S. Treasury bill is selling at 125 times earnings. Now, if your alternative is to buy something at 125 times earnings, or a good business whose earnings will probably increase at 15 or 18 times earnings, you've got to measure it against the risk. It isn't really a risk-free instrument, but the standard rate. And you know, in 1982, you know, the rates got up 15% or thereabouts, and that makes a lot of difference. I mean, you've got a choice with money. What do you do with it? In Europe, if you put it in the bank, you know, you will be charged for having it there. I mean, it's better to keep it under your mattress. So you've got a choice every day as what you do, and I think equities are cheaper than fixed dollar investments.
How Warren has changed from decade to decade to decade. Do you have a sense of that?
I've gotten dumber, but I've gotten wiser.
Okay, that's a nice phrase. But what does it mean?
It means that I can't
add a group of numbers remotely as fast as I used to be able to. I can't remember sometimes when I walk upstairs what while I'm walking up the stairs, I'm thinking about something else, so by the time I get to the top of the stairs, I don't remember why the hell I walked upstairs. It means I forget names so easily. It means that I can't read as fast as I used to read. I am a decaying machine that still feels wonderful. But I can't hear as well, I can't see as well, my balance is as good, but it doesn't interfere with my happiness, my work, anything.
Especially your work. Well, I mean, clearly your happiness, but it doesn't, you know, you're saying, notwithstanding...
It doesn't interfere with anything.
That ages...
I can get on a plane, go anyplace. You know, I can do anything as long as you don't ask me to dance. Or juggle, or, you know, or even remember, you know, who did I meet yesterday?
But in terms of doing the job that you do, allocating capital...
I can actually do that as well as ever.
As ever.
Yeah, that sounds obvious.
But better than that, do you do it today better than you did it 20 years ago?
Yeah, I've got a different set of opportunities. Well, that's certainly a possibility. I mean, it's a possibility under me. It's a possibility under the successor. I mean, it's a question of, can you invest truly large sums reasonably well? You can't do it as well as you can do small sums, so there's no question about that. But we will have to see how that works out over many years, because certain years, lots of opportunities, huge opportunities present themselves, and other years are totally dry holes. So that's not a judgment you can make in a one-year period or a three-year period. It's certainly a judgment you can make over time, though. And I personally, my estate will have basically nothing but Berkshire in it for some time as it gets dispersed to philanthropies. And I have a section in there which says to the trustees, in effect, who manage it, I have a section in there that says, ignore you're exempt, from my standpoint, from the law that trustees normally should diversify and do all of that sort of thing. And I want the entire amount that they have to be kept in Berkshire as they distribute it over time to the philanthropies, and I don't worry at all about the fact. I would like to have a very large sum go to the philanthropies, and I don't worry at all about the fact that it essentially will all be in Berkshire. I'm willing to make that decision while I'm alive, which will continue for some years after I die. So I have a lot of confidence in the ability of the Berkshire culture to endure, and that we have the right people to make sure that that happens. But I'm betting my entire net worth on that, and that doesn't give me pause at all. I rewrite my will every few years, and I write it the same way in respect to the Berkshire holdings. It would be a tough consideration for me if I were going to school, whether I wanted to not only invest, I'm talking about college, whether I wanted to invest the 4 years. I didn't want to go to college that much when I got out of high school. But not only the 4 years, but if I had to incur hundreds of thousands of dollars in student debt, I don't know which decision I would make. No, higher education is really expensive, and we've helped out many thousands of students, and the Gates Foundation has done the same thing, and other of the foundations that I support. But it's just expensive. It's very expensive.
Is it still worth it?
It depends on the individual. It depends on the individual more than the school. I mean, there's a lot to learn in those 4 years. I mean, there's a lot you can learn in those 4 years, and whether you do or not depends more on the individual. I don't think it makes sense for everybody to go to college. And I'm not so sure it made sense for me to go to college.
Really? Come on.
No, I'm not kidding. I don't know. I mean, I learned a lot by reading, and I spent 3 or 4 years, well, counting graduate school, 4 years. That I could have been doing other things, and there were a lot of intelligent things to do then. Who knows? No, I don't think it was essential. I mean, I had some wonderful people I met through it. Main thing when I went to Columbia, though, with
taking Ben Graham's course, I already knew what he was going to say. I mean, I'd read it. I understood, he was a very good writer. But it was inspirational. It was inspirational more than it was educational.
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you are different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag Believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video because you are awesome.
For 10 more amazing rules from Jeff Bezos, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
Do something you're very passionate about, and don't try to chase what is kind of the hot passion of the day. I think we saw it in the internet world quite a bit, where